Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm pretty excited as always because we're going to now be creating an MCP client. So if you all remember, one of the favorite websites I've been frequenting a lot in these videos is the Model Context Protocol website. So on the Model Context Protocol website, there's different sections here. The one, that we looked at last time that took a long time was building an MCP server. And today we're going to be looking into building an MCP client. So if you like these types of videos, these long type of videos where I'm really just going through things step by step, showing you how I think about things, trying to connect, piece it all together, then this is a video for you. This is probably going to be another long video. I've done a little bit of prep work ahead of time, and by that I mean sort of going through the motions to make sure I understand what I'm doing to be able to present this video. So again, if you like that sort of thing, long form video, I'm talking about really long, like probably at least 45 minutes, then by all means stick around. We're going to be learning a lot today. What I want to do is I want to create the MCP client first and foremost, and of course connect to our server. Then I want to take some of that code that we had in the server. If y'all remember, there's a little bit of code in the server, specifically around the tool calls. So if we open up here, MCP server, theme park tools, all this right here. Well, let me actually, before we show any of this, let me exit this. I actually had done this already. Let me do a git status. Let's go ahead and just nuke all this because I really just want to start fresh. So git checkout, make sure we're in the right place here. Okay, let me delete that theme park MCP client folder. So theme park MCP client. Okay, this is the state I want to be in. So if you all remember, in the theme park tools, we were doing a lot of sort of manual effort by doing this JSON document thing, then having to get the root element. Let me zoom in a little bit here so you all can see the root element stuff, and I'm not really a fan of that. I mean, that's just how the MCP server document was showing us how to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the way that we do it. So one thing I want to do is, instead of using like the generic HTTP client for each one of these, is just creating a typed HTTP client. So we can create our own models, we can serialize the data into those models, and then we can use our client in a custom way that makes it a lot easier for us to handle this. So that's pretty much it. Sorry if I sound a little bit congested. I'm a little bit nervous because I actually have my 1-year wedding anniversary coming up this weekend. So this is my only video for this week. And of course, I'll come back next week. I felt a little bit weird this morning, but I've been tackling it the best I could. Right now, I'm drinking some bone broth. This is a Kettle and Bone, not sponsored by Kettle and Bone. But if you guys want to sponsor me, well, I guess they wouldn't. Did I even get the name right? Kettle and Bone. It's Kettle and Fire, so I would never be able to get sponsored by a company that I couldn't even say their name right. But this Kettle and Fire bone broth thing is top notch. It's very, very delicious, and it's great to just drink when you're feeling a little down. You get your sodium, you get your protein. It's a nice, warm, calming drink. So sipping on that. It tastes delicious as always. And last thing is, I'm sorry if you hear the AC behind me. That little bit of a low hum is because it's really hot in here and I just have to put it. I didn't lower the AC that much though, so it'll probably turn off soon. Okay, so without further ado, let's get right into the first thing. So what we're going to be doing together here is we're going to be going through the MCP client documentation. Now, I highly recommend, if you're following along, pause the video, open up the document on your own, and go through it with me. Of course, pick your own language. Right here, the MCP client languages supported are Python, TypeScript, Java, Kotlin, C#. Of course, we're using C#. I'm using C# because I just want to learn more about it. It's the primary language I use at work. But there's sometimes, there's things that you can be really good at work that it's like a pattern. You just build up patterns. But then when you sort of break away from that mold, sometimes it's a little bit of a learning curve. And that's sort of what I'm learning here. Sometimes when you're working at an enterprise company, there's a lot that's already done for you. So when you go and actually write code, you're not able to do a lot of the stuff that we'll be doing here manually. So that's sort of the plumbing that I'm learning more about as I go through these exercises. So like I said, pull up the MCP client document on the Model Context Protocol website and follow it along with me, picking your favorite language. I haven't gone through all these languages, but I assume that they should mostly be the same. Okay, so without further ado, let's just start going through it. So in this tutorial, you'll learn how to build an LLM-powered chatbot client that connects to MCP servers. Before we begin, it helps to have gone through our Build an MCP server tutorial so you can understand how clients and servers communicate, which we've already done. So, of course, if you haven't already followed my account, if we go here, feed your channel, right? So this video right here, I built an MCP server from scratch in an hour and 23 minutes. We went through the MCP server document. So if you want to see me going through that, it's a long video, but if you want to see me building it, follow along with me, then I highly recommend watching that video. I'll leave sort of a, whatever that little flyout thing that comes up on the top right of your video screen, I'll leave a link there so it's just easy to find that video. Okay, sweet. So before you begin, we read that already. System requirements. Before starting, ensure your system meets these requirements. .NET 8 or higher. We're actually going to be using .NET 10. Anthropic API key from Claude. I'm actually using OpenAI. So just make sure that, typically Microsoft provides some vendor-specific libraries you can use for specific vendors. In this case, there is an Anthropic library. There's also an OpenAI SDK, which we'll visit during this video. Of course, Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. And let's just go ahead and start up by setting up our environment. So the first thing I want to do here is go to my code. I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code here. I'm going to close this off and I'm going to open our handy dandy integrated terminal. Now I really wish, actually there is a way to do that. I don't have to wish for it. I'm just going to open up let me make sure everything looks good here. I'm just opening up the document on the other side of the screen. That's why you see me turning in my head. So right now, if you're following along, I'm right underneath the setting up your environment. So I already have my solution created. I'm just going to go ahead and create a new project. So to create my project, I'm going to use the .NET command. So .NET new console, and we'll call this theme park MCP client. So just like we have theme park MCP server right here, we're going to be creating theme park MCP client. And now if we open up our solution right here, the solution is sort of the thing that holds all the different projects together. You can see right now there's only a reference to the theme park MCP server. I also want my client to be part of that solution. So what I'm also going to do is do .NET solution add, and now we should just be able to add a path to our theme park MCP client project. Just like this. So now you can see that we added it. So what I did was .NET solution add, theme park MCP client, theme park MCP client.cs project. And now if I do a .NET build, you'll see that both projects are actually built, right? So you can see the server and the client, both of them succeeded using .NET 10, and they both produced these two DLLs. One of them is the theme park MCP server DLL. And then of course we have the MCP client DLL. And now we're going to go ahead and start adding some packages. So I know for sure I'm going to need the model context protocol package. So I'm just going to do that. This is the .NET add package model context protocol. Let's see, cannot find any project. Of course, I need to navigate inside of the client folder. Let me clear the screen here a little bit, paste that again. Let me just move this again here so I can show you what I'm looking at right now. So right under here to add the required dependencies, I just added this first package here. Okay, so I'll move this screen back. Let me make sure that we're looking at Visual Studio Code. So I just added the first one. That was successful. Now I'm going to go ahead and add .NET add package Microsoft extensions hosting. Now the reason I'm not adding .NET add package Anthropic SDK is because we're actually going to be using OpenAI's SDK. Okay, so we have .NET add package Microsoft extensions AI. And even more so, it's not listed here, but just for me going through this exercise already once before, there's actually a vendor-specific package that Microsoft makes. So it's Microsoft Extensions AI.OpenAI. So if we just do this, we'll see that we also add that dependency. And if we open up our project folder here, you can see all the different dependencies that we have, right? So Microsoft Extensions AI, Microsoft Extensions AI.OpenAI, Microsoft Extensions Hosting, and Model Context Protocol. And now the last one we're going to need is, of course, the OpenAI SDK. So if we just go open a new tab, we can do not API keys. We'll go to libraries right here. So here on the libraries page, let me just make this dark so in case you're reading this at night, it doesn't hurt your eyes too much. You can see here there's this concept of creating and exporting an API key, but we're going to scroll a little bit further down to where it says install an official SDK. You can see it's already selected to .NET for me. This time I'm going to do .NET add package OpenAI. So let me now navigate back to Visual Studio Code, move the screen on the other side so it's easy for me to see, and I will add that package right there. Okay, cool. So now you can see we have all the different packages. The new one we just added, OpenAI, just to make sure everything is still working well. I'll go back up one level and I'll issue another .NET build command. Looks like everything builds just fine. So now moving back to the document, setting up your API key. Let me just move this so we can see. So setting up your API key, I already have an API key set. Let me actually do that in the background. So just follow the instructions here to set it up. It's not too crazy, but I just want to make sure that we're doing this right. Oh, I see. I think this time I'm gonna have to do some trickery here. I know there's like a lot of screen management going on right now, but at this point I haven't figured out a better way of doing this, so just bear with me. You're just gonna see the document right now because, like I said, I already have these keys set up. I just don't want to reveal them. Although I guess I can always just like revoke the API key after the video. So let me do that. I think it's gonna be a little better. Again, apologies for all the manual sort of stuff that's happening right now. All this window management. It's like sort of my first time doing this. Not first time, but you know, I'm still getting used to managing all the windows on my screen. So let's just go ahead and do the .NET user secrets init. So .NET user secrets init. Okay, so let's see. You cannot find MS Build project. Of course, I gotta be inside of the project folder. So .NET user secrets init. Okay, now you can see we have a user secrets ID. So I believe that when it sort of goes to the vault of the user secrets, whenever it tries to find these secrets, it uses this ID to find them. And now what I'm going to do is I've actually already done this once. So I'm going to use Control R, which allows me to find commands that I've issued before inside my terminal. And if I do .NET user secrets set, API key is right there in the open, but it's okay. I'm just going to revoke it as soon as this video is done recording. That's all right. I've seen people do this before, so I know it's okay. As long as I revoke it, it's fine. And that's it for setting up my API key. And now we're going to get to the fun part. So if we go back to the documentation, just to show you all where I'm looking, now I'm in the create the client. So the basic client structure. Let me have a sip here. All right. That is really, really freaking good. Again, if you are ever feeling a little bit down, have some chicken broth. It is just like a game changer. I cannot stress that enough. Okay, so we're going to open our program CS now. This is the entry point of our application, and this is really where the fun starts. Okay, so I'm going to save this real quick and just really what I'm going to do, because I don't really care about having to write all this myself. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste the using statements they have there. Again, we're not using the Anthropic SDK, so I'm just going to remove this. And I noticed that, and actually I wanted to maybe make a PR against the documentation here, but protocol transport is not a thing anymore. I actually don't think we even need to use that in this example, but I think it's just located directly under protocol now. You don't need to do protocol.transport like they have inside of the documentation there. All right, so var builder is going to be host create application builder. We're going to pass in the command line arguments here. And now we're going to do builder.configuration, add environment variables, and add user secrets. And we're going to give it program. Now I think program, because I looked up this before, it's just like a marker. It makes it easy for, let's say, this to find the assembly containing your secrets. Maybe if we hover over this, it will tell us. Let me see, adds the user secrets configuration source, searches the assembly that contains type program for an instance of Microsoft extensions configuration user secrets ID attribute, which specifies a user secrets ID. I think this can be quote unquote anything. Program is just a nice marker to use because every assembly contains a reference to program. So I believe you can just use program as a sort of a safe option. I'm going to remove these for now since we're not using them. So let's just clear that out because kind of have a pet peeve of having any using statements that I'm not actively using. And of course, as we go along, we'll figure out the ones that we need to include. Okay, so moving on to the next piece, we see that this creates the beginnings of a .NET console application that can read the API key from user secrets. Next, we'll set up the MCP client. So if you're following along, I'm now just going to write in the same file, just start writing out this code. So we're going to be doing some destructuring here. We have var command and arguments. This is going to point to a method that we will eventually write called get command and arguments. Let me just make sure I capitalize arguments here. Get command and arguments, passing in those command line arguments. Now we have our client transport. Whoops. Var client transport. The reason that some of the spelling might be off sometimes is because the way that I have this set up right now is I have my microphone behind my keyboard behind my mic, and sometimes I can't really see the keys. And that's why sometimes you might see me make mistakes as I'm typing. New STDIO client transport. We're going to pass in a new object here. We'll use name. So here we can use, let's say, theme park MCP server. We'll pass in command will be the command that we get there. And then the arguments will be the arguments that we get back from this destructuring statement up here. So close this off. Things are looking good so far. And now we'll say await using var MCP client equals await MCP clients, create async client transport. All right, let's see, what do we have here? Client options. All right, I don't think we need any of this yet. Var tools, await MCP client.list tools async. And now for each var tool in tools, okay, console.writeLine, our favorite statement here, and we will say connected to server with tools, tool.name. Okay, and remember what these tools are, right? The tools are something I talked about in many videos ago. A tool is just sort of an entity. It's something that enables the agent to be able to go and fetch data, okay, or interact with the outside world. Well, really that's what the MCP does, but rather a tool is part of the MCP, and it's sort of like a function call, a function that the agent can invoke to be able to get that data. In our case, if you go back to the theme park tools here, it's going to be these tools that we created earlier. So we have the get destinations tool, and we also have the get attractions tool, okay? So going back now to the program CS, we're just gonna continue on. Now it says add this function at the end of the program CS file. Let me just show you all what I'm seeing on my screen so we're not all completely lost here. We just got finished writing this piece. Now I'm in this piece right here. So add this function at the end of the program CS file. In this case, I will just copy this whole thing together. So let me go back to Visual Studio Code. And now I will just move this to the bottom of this file. Now, initially, I didn't really know what this type of pattern was. It seemed, I think it's a new thing that was, oh, sorry if the camera got a little bit weird there. I kicked it by accident, but this is something called pattern matching. So what this does is it'll look at the argument that was passed in, and it'll only match, I think maybe we can do something like this. I'm not entirely sure. Okay, it looks like maybe we can, but I think the way that this works is depending on how many variables you have defined in this array right here, it's going to match however many command line arguments you pass in. Maybe it's not exactly, let's say, how do I say this? It just so happens to be command line arguments because that's what's being passed in here, but maybe it's for any amount of arguments that you passed in, however many variables you have defined in here will be the ones that match with those that were passed in. That's maybe like a terrible way to describe this, but you can see if we call this and we pass, and maybe the better way of showing this is just with the example they have. So if we go over here, I'm gonna go down a little bit because they give a nice example here. You see when we run this, we have .NET run path to server csproj or server.py or server.js. So if we go back to our code, we can see for each one of those, whenever it matches, if that argument is py, ends with py, it's going to run the Python interpreter, right? If it ends with JS, it's going to run Node. If it ends, or rather in this case, if the directory exists or the file ends with csproj, which in this case it will, then it's just going to go ahead and run .NET run project script no build. Kind of very similar to like what we saw before, right? When we were manually doing the clients, or manually how do I say this? Manually calling the server from the IDE or the model context protocol inspector. Kind of the same thing we were doing back then. And do I even still have that file in here? MCP JSON. You see, it's very similar to this right here. Okay, we remember, we just did this file, or we just did this line where we call the DLL specifically because it makes it easier to debug. Remember, .NET Run sort of has a little bit more of indirection. It maybe will spin up other processes that make it hard for us to attach to it from a client-side perspective. So if we just issue the command to the DLL specifically, it'll be a lot easier for us to attach to it. All right, so going back to the documentation now, I'm going to scroll back up. Add this function at the end of the program CS file. We've already done that. It says this creates an MCP client that will connect to a server that is provided as a command line argument. It then lists the available tools from the connected server. All right, let me just take a sip of this. I really hope it's not too loud on the screen. I guess unless you guys are like into ASMR or something, too loud on the headphones. Me swallowing this bone broth here. Okay, query processing logic. Now let's add the core functionality for processing queries and handling tool calls. Now, one of the nice things about Anthropic is that they, if we go back to their documentation, they have messages, for example, and I want to actually, let's bring this up. Anthropic, Cloud Code in action, Anthropic SDK. I want to tell you what I'm talking about. Maybe in here, let's see, C#. Okay, iChat client integration. The SDK provides an implementation of the iChat client interface from Microsoft Extension's AI.abstractions library. This enables Anthropic client and Anthropic services iBeta service to be used with other libraries that integrate with these core abstractions. For example, tools in the MCP C# SDK Model Context Protocol library can be used directly with an Anthropic client exposed via iChat client. So for us to be able to get this piece right here, the iChat client, there are some things we need to do. And let's see if I can remember how to do it. I've already done this before, but that's sort of the point of these videos, for you to see how I do this and to learn about it. Now, I do know for sure, let me see how I want to approach this. So there is a document. So using the iChat client interface right here. So this is from Microsoft, use the iChat client interface. The iChat client interface defines a client abstraction responsible for interacting with AI services that provide chat capabilities. So what I want to do right now is very similar to sort of what they're showing here. And I'm going to try this out, but this time with the OpenAI client. So what I'm doing here is sort of a mixture of all these different libraries just to see how things are being created. So I probably will use some, this a little bit and then some stuff from the SDK. So I'm using multiple documents to be able to guide me right now to figure out how I can actually start using the client. So I'm going to now go back to Visual Studio Code and let's see what we can start doing. Let me start writing a little bit of that code that they had. So they have here Anthropic client. What we want to do, and probably right under here, I'll leave that other one under there. And when I say the other one is, I mean the command and arguments, I'm going to leave at the bottom of the file. For now, let's do var OpenAI client equals, let's say new OpenAI client. Here I should be able to pass the API key. So this is going to be builder configuration. I think here we had this set as OpenAI key, perhaps. Let me go back to the integrated terminal because that will show us the exact name. It's going to be the same thing that we said earlier. So Open API key. Let me just copy this right here, close the terminal. Let me open this. Well, not open it. Oh, I literally, don't you hate when that happens? You copy something and then you go and select the other thing, and instead of pasting it, you recopy it. So you kind of lose the context a little bit. Okay, so Open API key. Now I think what we should do here is we have, I think last time I used the get chat client. Let me just make this, give this its own line here. So get chat client as iChat client. Nice. Okay, it's saying here there is no argument given that corresponds to the required parameter model. Okay, I remember how to get this. So we're now going to go back to the documentation. And again, if you see that black window, it's because what I have to do when I switch scenes. So when I switch scenes, I have to move the window into the primary view and then switch the scene since I'm sharing only one monitor. I think there's actually, let me see if we can look that up because that'll be just fun to look up on its own. I think it's like Elgato Stream Deck or something like this. There is this thing called a Stream Deck that gives you these little buttons right here. And with these buttons, I imagine you can just click. And I think that would just make my life a lot easier if I'm able to click and see an icon of what each thing represents. It's a little bit pricey, so I probably won't, like maybe if I get to like 500 or 1,000 subscribers, I can maybe give this as a reward to myself to sort of upgrade, given that I see that there's a need or people actually want to see more of this. But until now, I'll just use my little hotkeys I created in OBS and just really go from there. Okay, so back to the fun. What we're gonna do in libraries, if we go up here in OpenAI developers, there's this thing called models. Now what I want to do is I'm just going to use the cheapest one. So GPT-5 Nano, fastest, most cost efficient version of GPT-5. And if you click on this little copy right here, right, this gives you a sort of pinned version of the model. So if we now go back to Visual Studio Code and we paste that string here, you can see this is a pinned version. Okay, so it's not, I kind of see this as like a package log file if you've ever worked with NPM, where you have, if you don't have any of the semantic versioning like the caret or the tilde to get you the latest minor or major or patch version rather, you can do something like this where you pin the version. So you always know the exact version of the model you're going to get, the model. So in this case, let's say it's GPT-5 Nano from August 7th of 2025. All right, so now going back to the code, we've just done the iChat client piece, which sort of transforms the get chat client to be able to now use iChat client. which means now we should just be able to do as builder, use function invocation and .build. So as far as I know, one of the reasons of doing this is because now we can sort of have everything in one single place. This makes it very easy to add cross-cutting concerns later. We can do things like caching or logging and a lot of other features. This integrates nicely with the middleware and pipeline that .NET sort of exposes. So without this, you would have to do a lot of the tool invocations manually. There's a lot of other things you'd have to do manually. So using this sort of builder pattern where you have function invocation and build just makes it a lot easier to swap out different models and integrate with the overall Microsoft ecosystem and even the more general AI ecosystem. This is just from what I've learned, okay? Obviously, there might be some things I'm missing here, but at a high level, pretty much it just makes it a lot easier, especially for more complex apps. But you see that it hasn't even taken us that much time to set up, so why wouldn't you just do it the, let's say, quote unquote, right way from the get-go? And I think maybe if we even hover over some of these, do they give us any maybe better descriptions? It doesn't really look like they do, but this is just from some of the research that I've done. Okay, sounds good. Let's continue now in the code. Make sure that I'm showing Visual Studio Code. We're going to have our options. Now we have var options equals new chat options. We have our max output tokens. This is just me following directly what I see here. Model ID. I'm not sure if I actually need to have model ID included again inside of here, but just because it's in the example, I will. I haven't actually tried to see what happens if I don't include it, but for the sake of this, we will include it. And tools, we're going to use, I believe this is similar to like the REST operator in JavaScript, where we're sort of expanding all the different tools that were gathered up here into the chat options. All right, now we're going to do some cool things with colors. So we'll do console foreground color equals console color dot green. We'll do console dot right line. Here we'll do MCP client started. We'll do console.resetColor. That way any subsequent, let's say, console statements are not going to have the same color because that's not what we want. Now we're going to invoke a method that we have yet to write, prompt for input. But instead of just having it sitting down there, what I'm going to do is actually just copy it from the documentation and just stick it right down here. Okay, so now you can see we have prompt for input. Right? And this is very simple. I mean, I could have written this out myself, but it's really just enter a command or exit to quit. We change the color again. So we give the little terminal marker a nice color, and then we reset it so that subsequent statements or logs are not going to be in the same color. And now we sort of start getting a little bit into the bread and butter of things here. Now, instead of reading, right? Because remember, the documentation for Anthropic, it has a very specific way of using their SDK. Pretty much everything here is okay. As far as I know, let's say general to use. This part is okay here. Here's where it gets a little different. And this is actually why I reference the request a streaming chat response. Because you can see this line right here, await for each, chat response update, and client get streaming response async. What is AI? It's very similar to what they're doing here with Anthropic. So this piece I do want to write out because there are some things, so how do I say this? Let's say you're trying to learn something new. I think sometimes like for that prompt for input method, it's pretty simple. There's nothing really that we're learning there, maybe apart from changing the colors, because I actually didn't even know how to do that. But when there's something complex, something I want to try and learn better, I do like to use my hands for that because, well, I don't know, it helps it like stick better in your head. It's like akin to writing notes as your professor is talking, helps it stick better in your mind. So in very similar vein, we're going to be doing the same thing. So now let's go ahead and just start writing that method. So right under prompt for input, we're going to do while console.readLine is string query and not exit dot equals query string comparison ordinal ignore case. I believe that's the end of that line there. Just let me make sure real quick. Ordinal ignore case. I'm gonna expand this right here, and now I have if string is null or empty, or I'm sorry, is null or white space query. We're going to say prompt for input, and then we'll go ahead and continue. And now this is where we're going to go back to the documentation just to make sure we have all that settled in there. what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'm just going to be referring to this. So if you see my head looking at the other screen, I just want to show you what I'm looking at. So this is the request a streaming chat response. So let's go back to Visual Studio Code. And now here we're going to say await for each chat response update. Okay, update in client.getStream. I think here instead of client, we need to be using MCP client. So MCP client dot get streaming response. Oh wait, no, what am I doing here? OpenAI client. There you go. OpenAI client get streaming response async. Okay, and here we're going to use our query. And we also want to make sure we pass in these options, right? Our chat options that contain the max output tokens, the model ID, and the tools that we want to use. We'll open this up. We're going to do console.write. Here we'll do update. And that's really the only piece that we're getting from the Microsoft documentation. Going now back to Model Context Protocol website. Here we're just going to do a console write line. Let me just remove the system qualifier here because we don't need it. And finally, we're going to prompt for input. All right, so if I'm just reading documentation, we have key components explained. So I would like to pull this up. I think it's good that we read it together. So key components explained, client initialization. The client is initialized using MCP client create async, which sets up the transport type and command to run the server. Then we have server connection, supports Python, Node.js, and .NET servers. The server is started using the command specified in the arguments, configures to use STDIO for communication with the server, and initializes the session and available tools. Then we have query processing, leverages Microsoft extensions AI for the chat client. In this case, remember, we use the vendor-specific Microsoft extensions.ai.openai as well to give us the ability to modify that into the iChat client. Here it says configures the iChat client to use automatic tool function notification. Remember, we're already getting that for free with Anthropic, but we're not getting it for free with the OpenAI. So here, SDK provides an implementation of the iChat client interface. They're already giving us that. But because we need to do it manually, okay, we need to do it manually because if we go back to our code here, this GetChat client is not an iChat client. So we have to transform it. And the transformation is made available to us from OpenAI. Okay, it's from this package right here that we added earlier. So Microsoft Extensions AI OpenAI. Okay, going back to the docs and reading a little bit about that. The client reads user input and sends it to the server. The server processes the query and returns a response. The response is displayed to the user. Okay, now running the client. Now, before we get to the fun part, because this is probably the part we've all been waiting for, I just know because I've gone through this myself that in the theme park MCP server, remember, we are setting this up to be of STDIO client transport. But previously, I had left this using HTTP transport. So what are we going to do? We're going to do with STDIO server transport. I know here I need to change this to be host create empty application builder. I think this is it. We can remove the map MCP from there. And then finally here, we'll do app.run async. And that should be everything I need to do. I'll clean up some of these using statements here since we're not using them just to make things a little bit more clean. And now everything should ideally work. Okay, so we're going to run it just like it says. Before I even do that, let's go ahead and build this guy. Let me clear this out here. Go back to the folder where the solution is. Let's issue a .NET build statement. Okay, so everything looks good there. And now let's do .NET run. Let's see, path to, I was literally gonna put path to server CSP project, but what we wanna do is go back up one directory, theme park MCP server. Let's do, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not in the right place here. I need to actually be inside of the client. There you go, let me clear this again. Let's do .NET run. Now we're going to pass theme park MCP server, theme park MCP server.cs proj. So let's see what happens here. Okay, MCP client started. Enter a command or exit to quit. Now, if you remember correctly, previously we had functionality to be able to, in this case, let's say, get a list of attractions from a specific park. So let's see what happens if I say, give me a list of attractions inside of Epcot. Let's see what this gives us. It might take some time here. I'm not like 100% sure, Let's see what this does. I think last time when I ran this, I did run into a little bit of an issue with the output, but maybe this time it won't work because I sort of have an idea of how these things should go. Okay, so it looks like actually nothing happened. So how the heck do we even start debugging this? Well, there's a couple of things that we can do. Enter a command or exit to quit. I think the first thing I'd like to do is before even trying to connect from my client to the server, let's just go ahead and see if we can't just connect to the server itself. And I think the best way for us to do that is actually with using the Model Context Protocol Inspector. So I'm going to go back to the documentation here, just so you remember. Remember the MCP Inspector, so it says here, in-depth guide to using the MCP Inspector for testing and debugging. 1 second. So I'm just going to run this with npx just like we did last time. Whoops. Okay. Let's just run this guy here. Okay. I see I have 2 windows open. Okay. This is theme park MCP. This is this. All right. Now let's just make sure we're in the right place here. So we're going to go here. Let's see, STDIO.net project. So this is using the DLL inside of the debug folder. So what I really want to make sure is if I'm going to go down that route, I better make sure that I've actually built this whole thing. So let's do .NET build. Let's give it a fresh build in debug mode. So we have the latest and greatest. Okay. Let's now go back to the browser right here. We should be able to connect to it. Okay. List tools. Remember, this list tools thing is effectively what that tools method was doing for us in the code. So if we do, let's say get attractions, let's say Epcot, run tool, let's see. Okay, so it does look like we're getting, it definitely looks like we are getting some output here. Okay, so Disney and Pixar, Short Film Festival, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Frozen Ever After. So let's see if now we can go back to the code and see what's wrong here. We know at least just debugging from a purely server perspective, we are able to get what we want. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of this code and see if there's anything that I messed up here because again, I did go through a lot of this earlier on. So let's just see what happens. So we have host, create application builder. Let me just also have the client, or not the client, the documentation side by side. So we have all the dependencies. If I'm just reading through the code, I pass in the args here, create application builder. We have our environment variables and our secrets. We have the get command and arguments with args, client transport, STDIO client transport, excuse me. Wow, excuse me. Command, arguments, okay, arguments. Await using var MCP clients. Let's see, await MCP client, create async, client transport. That all looks good. Var tools equals await MCP client, list tools async. All right, for each var tool on tools, connected to server with tools this, OpenAI client. You see, and one thing that we should note is if you notice here, it's saying that connected to server with tools, we actually never got, we never got that message, right? So let's close some of these other terminals that I have open here. And I kind of just want to start fresh. So theme park MCP client. Let me again, even though we haven't changed anything, but just for a sanity check, let me go ahead and build this in debug. Let's go inside of our clients. Let's do .NET run. I'm going to go up to theme park MCP server and theme park MCP server CS proj. Okay, so I'm not sure if last time we actually saw the tools, right? So enter a command with tools, get destinations, get attractions, enter a command or exit to quit. So let's try again. So give me a list of attractions inside of Epcot. In the meantime, while that's running, let's see if we can look at our server here. So we have our MCP server with STDIO, server transport, no settings with tools from assembly, add singleton, builder build, await app run async, MCP client. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the next step. Now, and this is actually a great learning point right here. Let me think about what I want to do. So what I want to do now is I want to run the server manually and be able to connect to it. And let's see how to do this. If I have the server running manually, can I run it at the same time? I should be able to. So let's think about this. .NET run. I can start the process there. Okay, I think I have an idea here. So if we go back to, this is what I want to do. In the same way that before we modified it so that it would just run the DLL directly, I think that's what I want to do here. Now this has no build, which maybe that could be causing issues, but I don't really think it should, right? Because we are already building it ourselves. So what I'm actually going to do here is very similar to this. So if it ends with CS, I just want you to run. Let's see. I'm just going to copy this whole thing here. When script ends with JS, I'm going to come to this line here. Let me move this out so we can see this, right? We're going to come here, or even better yet, let's do node, I only want to copy up to here. So let's say when script ends with CS, or let's even do .dll. Okay. What do I want to do? I want to do .NET. Let's see, .NET args. I have like multiple things going on here. Yeah, let's just remove this piece here. .NET, and in here, I actually just want to give it that DLL, right? And we know what the DLL is. If we actually build these, so it should be the server here. Okay, let's just run this. I'm going to remove all of this right here. Okay, so now we're saying if the script ends with DLL, so we're just going to pass it the thing directly, then just run .NET theme park MCP server bin debug, or even better, I think we can just do .NET args. Let's not even put the path again. That seems a little bit redundant. We should just be able to do args because args is the thing that I'm passing. So in this case now, let's do theme park MCP client, or even better yet, we're inside the client folder. Let me clear this right now. We're going to do .NET. Let's do .NET run, pass in theme park MCP server, and then theme park MCP server CS proj. What was the path again? Theme park MCP server. Oh man, I think it's bin. Yeah, bin debug net10 theme park MCP server.dll. Let's see what this does. Okay, enter a command. Now, from this perspective, right, if we open another window now, so I'm going to go to File, New Window. Let me make sure that we can all see this because I really need for us to see. Oh, this is great. So I'm sharing the whole window, not just the application. What I should be able to do now is open theme park MCP server. Okay, we already have a process running, right? So let's go here. We're now in theme park tools. If I do Command Shift P, just like we learned about before, and do attach to .NET 5 or .NET Core process, we should be able to have one running here. Now, we have two. Now I'm trying to think why that's the case. Probably because I have multiple. Well, let's see what happens. I chose one of them. If I click this, I'm able to get one. Okay, so that was the wrong one. Why is that the wrong one? Because I see that no symbols are loaded, right? If I hover over this, it says no symbols have been loaded for this document. So I know that's not the right one. Now, this is probably not the best way of going about it, but let's see if we can just maybe choose the next one. Is it still going to be there? So we have .NET. I don't see it. Oh, okay. It looks like the process was killed. If we actually go back and see from the other window back here, you see this piece right here. Let me just close the, let me close this. Okay, so this little piece down here, it says throw exception, error, input, output, error. Let me close this here, run .NET run again. Okay, now it's saying for me to run a command. Let me see if we can go to the other window now. This is one thing I don't really love this about Mac. I feel like with Windows, it's just way easier to just manage your windows. No process was selected, that's fine. Let's go to attach. This time I'm gonna go for broke and see if this second one works. Okay, so it looks like this time I am able to select the breakpoint. So ideally this means that we selected the right one. So we know that we are using the, let's see, get attractions one. So let's just go ahead here, set a breakpoint there. What I'm gonna do is move this to the other screen for now, just so we can invoke it. So get me a list of attractions inside of Epcot. And let's see if this works. Ideally, we can actually see a breakpoint here, and we did. So I'm actually so glad that happened because I feel like that was a great just learning moment. Let me just update or zoom in here. So we see that by me opening another window, right? I open two separate windows. I have one window as the client, another window that's the server. Remember, my client is actually starting my server. The client is the thing that owns the server. Remember, since we're doing STDIO, remember the operating system is creating the pipes. The parent owns the child process. In this case, our MCP client is owning our server. So from the server window, I can actually attach to that process the client started, and just like we saw now, debug it. So this is actually so great that this happened during the recording. I'm really glad it did. So let's proceed here. Let's see if there's anything weird going on here. We're just gonna go through this a little bit by little. Let me see all destinations. I think last time we did results view. Okay, so we're definitely getting data back, right? Value kind object. I see things happening here. Let me just proceed. Destination ID. At the end here, we have profit, destination, children, attractions. So we definitely have a lot of stuff going on here. This looks a little bit strange. I think this should actually have another backtick here, although I don't think that's the reason we're not getting any data back. But let's just proceed here because we know that works. So let me just modify this here. So we have another new line. So everything's sitting nicely on its own line. And what I can do here, because I don't really need this anymore, I can just hide behind here. Now you can see we're sort of back in the same place we were. But at least now we know the server's working. What I want to do this time now is go back to the root. Let's do another .NET build, because remember, we just modified the other project. We just modified the tools with that new backslash. And now let's see if we can figure out what's going on here. So since this is the client, we should have a way to debug this directly. It would be nice. I have a feeling there's something going on in here. Maybe await for each update an OpenAI client, get streaming response async. Let me just go back to the Microsoft docs, because it could very well be the case that it's just an issue with how we're doing the streaming. So use the iChat client interface. So await for each chat response update in client. Let me just go back to code to make sure we have everything. So await for each chat response update in client, get streaming response async. We have our query and options, console write update. Okay, we have console.write, right? This is just coming directly from Anthropic, or not Anthropic, but that's coming from the Model Context Protocol website. Let's go back to see if there's anything else that we're doing here. We're getting the tools, so we know that's good. We know we're able to start the server because we just debugged it. Query processing logic, so we have console read line is string query and not exit, right? And not exit equals query, string comparison, ordinal ignore case. Well, let's see what happens. Now, to be completely honest, for me to be able to debug this, I will need to go and do some research, right? I know it's going to be in here somewhere. Do I have my... Yeah, I don't have my profile set up, but because I'm using the C# dev kit inside of Visual Studio Code, there's actually a more interesting way of running this client. But before I do that, yeah, it would be really nice because we get up to here, right? We do prompt for input. If isString is no white space query, prompt for input, continue. One thing I want to see, because there is this text property here, could this be the reason why things aren't working as they should? Let's just go ahead and see. So let's go to, and in this case, you know, one thing I want to do as well, I do want to use the command that they provided us with to start, because the only reason I changed this line down here was to make it easier to debug, but let's actually start it in the way that they want us to start it. And when I say they, I mean MCP. So now we have update.text. So let's go over this. So this is the text of this update, whereas update is an entire object. So that maybe could be the reason. Let's just go ahead and find out. So one more time, let's build it. So let's do .NET build to get a fresh build. Now let's do, well, before we do that, let's go inside of MCP client and let's do .NET run. We'll go back to our server, theme park MCP server, and theme park MCP server.csproj. Okay, connected to server with tools, get attraction, get destinations, give me a list of attractions inside of the Magic Kingdom. Maybe this time let's try the Magic Kingdom. Okay, let's see what happens. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And that's the point of videos like this. Maybe this video is gonna last much longer because I'll be honest with you, I have not run into this before. So we just got to figure out what's the issue. Now, one cool thing here is that I do have add get ignore with bin job, okay, excludes. Honestly, what we should do is we have AI on our side. I haven't used AI with you all, I don't think, in here. Before I was trying to use Copilot with all like the cheap models, auto, but now I've actually hooked up my ChatGPT license, so I think we can use this a little bit better. So let's see what happens. When I run, let me just give this a little bit more context. When I run the following command from inside of the theme park MCP client directory, I would expect to get streamed results back. However, the output is empty. The output is empty. I debugged the server. Debugged the server and confirmed that it is retrieving results and sending them back. Say it looks like an issue with the client and parsing the results. Here's the output. Here is the output. So let's see, then the latest one that we did. So let's say here, enter a command. That's not the one I want. Here's a good one right here. So let's do this whole thing right here. Here's the output. I'll add some backticks just to, so it knows that this is code. Now, one thing I don't love about this is that it will just automatically make fixes for me. I don't know. I mean, previously there are ways to like modify, plan mode. I don't see any modes here, default permissions. So I'm going to go for it and hopefully it doesn't change too much, but let's see what AI has to say. And this is cool because this is also kind of this gives you more of an insight of what maybe the real workflow would look like, right? Let me make sure we're not running this. Okay, I found the client loop. Next, I'm checking the tool implementation return shape to confirm whether the model is returning non-text blocks that the client currently ignores. Let's see what we get. In the past, when I was doing this ahead of time, it was very helpful. Obviously, I mean, these are great models, so let's see what happens. I'm going to patch the streaming loop to handle all content block types, not just update text, and add a safe fallback so true results are printed even when the text delta is empty. Okay, well, this is like a lot right here, right? I can assure you that everything that it's adding right now, it definitely was not this robust before. So I've patched and built successfully. Now I'm running the exact client notification non-interactively with a sample prompt to confirm output is no longer dropped. Let's see what this actually does, because frankly, I don't want all these changes. I think it's way too much. I can assure you that whatever the problem is, if I can just figure out what the problem is, it wasn't this bad before. And maybe this is an opportunity for me to do another cut, because at some point, we have to cut our losses, I guess. And I can show you so much debugging, but I also don't want people to just drop off the video entirely and just have to watch me bang my head here for like 20 minutes if that's how long it takes. I'll give this a couple of more minutes to do its magic, and if not, we'll go from there. Let's see what happens. Running command for 51, 52. Okay, so I am going to cut it here. I'm just saying this so when I look back, I can figure out where it was that I want to cut. So you'll see a little bit of a cut, and when we come back, I'll go ahead and explain what the issue is. Okay, so we're back from the long wait, and the worst thing is that I literally didn't do anything and somehow it ended up working. I don't know if you guys ever run into those issues, especially if you're debugging, where you'll literally just try something, it won't work, and then you just try again and all of a sudden it does. Even after all the rebuilding that we tried to do ourselves, things weren't working, but after I debugged it, again, didn't make any changes, but it just worked. But I do want to show you a little bit of what I did. So as you all know, I'm not using Visual Studio directly. I'm using Visual Studio Code. And inside of Visual Studio Code, I have an extension that is called C#. Okay, there's C# and C# Dev Kit. Now, I believe because I'm using C# Dev Kit, if I actually want to be able to debug the client, I have to set up a very specific launch.json, okay? Launch.json will make specific debug profiles available to me when I go ahead and click this debug menu here. You can see when I expand this menu, there's different profiles that come up. One of them is this debug theme park MCP client, which is conveniently named right over here. Now, one of the main things is because we're using C# extension, the kit, I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but so far from the research I've done, we need to use this core CLR type and give it all this information. Now, this information I did generate using ChatGPT. So you can see here that we created a launch.json with all the specific arguments. And then from there, we just went ahead and debugged it. I also want to show you that there is some documentation that you can read if you do want to learn a little bit more about this. I'm not sure if we've covered this in the past, but there is this debugging section here on the Visual Studio Code website. So you can see we have run and debug, debug with F5, attaching to a process, a lot of the other stuff that maybe we covered, at a high level, but this will allow you to go a little bit deeper and learn more about debugging. So now if we go back, right, if we go back now to our sort of client here, I want to show you this running in real time. So remember, because the client is the thing that's owning the server, we can actually run the client because we control it. However, the server is not something we control. If we just start the server on its own, remember, there's no port, there's no socket we can use to connect to it. But if we debug the client is the owner of the server, so we could debug that. We own the client. So let's go to theme park MCP client here. Let's go to program.cs. And this time, let's just go ahead and set a breakpoint, maybe at this first prompt for input. If I now go to run and debug, let's click this. You can see it's going to actually set a breakpoint here. So prompt for input, you can see the output down here. It says MCP client started. I'll just go ahead and press play. And let's hope now we get some output, because I literally, before I came back from the cut, did the command I'm about to issue right now, and it worked. So give me a list of attractions inside of Epcot. And now let's see if this works. Let me just expand this a little bit here. Let's close this window out. And let's see if we get some data. And if this doesn't work, then maybe it's just one of those like bad luck things while recording. What's that? Oh, here we go. Okay. It's like when you're setting up for a demo at work and it works right before the demo, and then you do the demo and it doesn't work, even though you did the exact same thing. It's almost exactly what I'm experiencing here. But check this out, right? So here are the attractions listed for Epcot. So Disney and Pixar Short Film Festival, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Frozen Ever After, American Heritage Gallery, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. Let's go ahead and see if we can get more. Let's say, give me a list of attractions inside of Magic, or let's say Islands of Adventure. I believe this is some of the stuff that we were doing beforehand when we were just sort of messing with the client ourselves through the inspector, but now we're actually creating our client to invoke these tools for us. So now let's see what the output is here. We're getting this notification of a new version of something. I'm going to exit out of there. So look at this. It seems like for some, maybe it works better than others. Maybe let's see if we can try something else. Let's say, give me a list of attractions inside of the Magic Kingdom. So maybe there's an issue with the way that we're parsing these sort of theme park names, right? These attractions, these destinations. Give me a list of attractions inside of the Magic Kingdom. And if this piece doesn't work here, what we'll do is we'll actually go to the typed HTTP client part, because there's still a whole literal half of this video we need to get to. It looks like this maybe failed one more time. We're still debugging, but it looks like there are issues. But what I want to do this time is see why are we not actually getting anything back. So give me a list of attractions. If we don't get anything back in here, let's see if there's anything in the updates. I'd imagine not, because if there was, we would see it, right? It's like I'm putting a breakpoint in the update text, expecting for me to see something, or maybe there is. Let's see. Yeah, update text. It looks like there's an issue here. Now, does this give us any more information? Maybe role, no text, raw representation, null, created at, continuation token, contents. Okay, so it seems like there's an issue maybe with follow-ups, or why we're unable to get some of this information. But I think we've at least proven that we can get it to work. Before we actually debug anything there, what I'd like to do is just go ahead and get to the next part of the video, okay, which is the typed HTTP client part. So what exactly is the typed HTTP client? If we go to our theme park MCP server, we do have theme park tools. Now inside of theme park tools, this video has been going on for an hour and 9 minutes, but remember, we had that long cut in there, so we're going to cut things out. But anyway, going back to the content here, what we're doing here is we're doing a lot of like manual picking at the different properties, right? We have to look at the root element and we have to get the property by the string name and enumerated array. It's like a lot of kind of annoying things we have to do that frankly, I just don't want to do. And it's a lot easier and a lot just easier to reason about when you have a typed HTTP client that gives you those methods already that are very easy to use. So the first one I want to try out is, well, the easiest one here, which is just get destinations. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to exit everything out. Inside of MCP server, I think we're going to start off by creating a new folder called, let's call this clients. Okay. Let's call this, and this is, yeah, theme park MCP server. I think what I'd also like to do, maybe, I'll just call this clients, yeah. I'm going to create a new file here called themeparkclient.cs. And I'm also even going to create an interface called iThemeParkClient.cs. Okay, so what is theme park client going to be? This is going to be a public, let's say, sealed class, theme park. Let's say theme park client. And I think here we can use HTTP client, which is the primary constructor. And before we even actually do this piece here, because what I really want to do is inherit, right, from the iThemePark client, which we haven't defined yet, which we'll do in a moment. So I'm just going to actually leave it like this for now, because the next piece is going to be us creating this interface and even the model. So I'm just going to leave this as a scaffold right now. This is probably complaining because it wants me to put all this in a namespace. So let's do namespace. This should live inside theme park MCP server dot clients, right? That's what we're doing. Theme park MCP server dot clients. I think the next thing we should do is create our models. So let's go over here and create models. Okay, the first one we're going to do, let's actually go back to the browser now so we can see the different types of models that we have. Oh, apologies for the black screen there. If you all remember, going back to the theme park wiki, we can go to the HTTP API here, HTTP API, and we can click on destinations here. So let's go ahead and expand this and see what this looks like. So destinations, we have this outer property here called destinations. It contains an array of objects where each object is a destination. Now we have a string ID, a name, which is a string, a slug, which is a string, and we have an array of parks, which is objects, and each object has an ID and a name, each of which are both strings. Let's see if there's any possibility that anything in here will be null. It doesn't look like there will be. I just did a Control F to find. So I think that's already a good place for us to start. So if we now go back to Visual Studio Code, I think that's really what we should just do, right? Now we should just start focusing on creating these models. So what I want to do is let's go ahead and create the destination model. So I'm going to call this destination.cs. Make sure that Visual Studio Code is showing. Let me just reduce this a little bit so I have some more real estate. We're going to create a public sealed record destination, okay? Inside of here, we're going to do just like what we talked about right now. This is going to be public required string ID, and the property accessors are going to be get and init, which I learned this is sort of the modern way of using property accessors instead of doing get and set. Unless you want for these properties to be mutable after the fact, you only want them to be set during initialization. Make it so that anyone can always get the value and only set it during initialization, which is what we want. We don't expect for these values to be changed after the fact. Public required string name, okay, get init. And then we have public required string slug. Let's do get init, okay? And then we have parks, which we'll get to in a second. Now this is also complaining about the same thing it said earlier. Let's create another namespace for this. So we'll do theme park MCP server dot models. So that all looks good. Now we need to create our park model. So let's do park.cs. Let's do public sealed record park. Inside of here, we're going to have an ID and a name. So let's do public required string ID. We'll do get and init. And then we'll do public required string name, get init. From here, again, the same namespace thing. I'll just copy this from the other files. So we don't have to go ahead and type that out by hand. Whoops, did not mean to delete that. We'll set our namespace up here. So now we have our park right? ID name, we have our destination. Now we just need to include the actual property here for the parks, right? So public required, this is going to be a park, or rather this is going to be a read-only list of a park, and we'll call this parks. We'll set this to get init and live happily ever after. Okay, so now we have the destination, we have the individual park, and now I think what we should do is also create the destinations. So let's do destinations. This will be in the same namespace. So let me just copy this so I don't have to type it out. Public sealed record destinations. Now we can do, this is going to be public required. This has to be items. We can't, I wish we can use like destinations, but we can't. I read only list of destination, and let's call this items. And so this is something that you see often in sort of APIs where you have a collection and it's called items, because again, we can't call destinations because it's going to sort of shadow the model itself. Now we have all the different models. Let's go back to our interface that we now have to implement, or not implement, but just write out. So public interface, theme park clients. We're making a lot of progress here. This is amazing. This is going to return a task, and this should be of destinations. And in here, we can say get destinations, and maybe perhaps here we'll take a cancellation token and we'll just set this equal to default, sort of the standard. I've seen this a lot in examples. I think it's a good starting point for us. So let's just proceed in this way. Let's do namespace, theme park MCP server dot clients. We have theme park client, and now finally, after doing all that, I know a lot of that was fast, so I'm going to push all this code up to GitHub, and I'll add links to all this in the description. This time I will try my best to remind myself to add those links and also go back to previous videos, update the links on those descriptions too. So you can see how I'm doing all this to sort of really be able to just read it yourself instead of watching the video. I know I tend to talk fast. We'll come now back to theme park. We have the theme park client here that we want to import. I think we need to use this second one here. Or let's see, theme park client. Not sure why that's not going there. But here, this is going to be a public task of destinations. Here it's going to be, was it just get destinations, I think? Yeah, get destinations. Okay, this is going to take a cancellation token. This is going to be default, just exactly like what we had before. And what is this going to do? Well, it's actually now going to use the client that we created. And this is going to do get from JSON async. We want this to return destinations. I think actually there's one thing I want to do here, because if I do it this way, if I try to do it this way, let's do destinations here and pass this inside. Let's see what it's saying here. It says sends a get request to the specified URI and returns the value from deserializing. I think this on its own will return a nullable. So where can we see this? Destinations. Yeah, you can see this returns a nullable destination. So there's a little bit of a type mismatch here. But what I want to do is I don't want to return the object and then have to do like a destination.items. I just want to have the items already. So I can just set that equal to the variable that I care about. So I think to make this a little bit better, let's just remove this piece here. Instead of setting this as like an arrow function, let me just remove this here. Now I think we should be able to do something like var response equals this piece right here. And now we can say var items equals response.items or empty array. And now we could just return this directly, okay? Because now that means the caller, oh, what happened here? So items is not null here. Items, response, items. So why would items is not null here? Destination, item, task, destinations. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, here we need to return an read-only list of destination. There you go. Okay, so it's just an issue with the type that I was sending back. Now let's see what's wrong here. So theme park client does not implement interface member get destinations. Let me just go back here and make sure maybe there's just something that I messed up here. Oh, task destinations. This is actually going to be a read-only list of destination. Let's go ahead and modify this. Let's go back. Okay, now it all looks good. Okay, so everything looks cool right now. Sure, yeah, we can just sort of have fun with this. But now what we need to do is go back to program CS. Okay, and we need to set this whole thing up. Before we had this singleton that was doing this, but what we want to do is actually say builder.services.add HTTP client. This is going to take our theme park client, and the implementation is going to be the theme park client. And then down here, we'll say configure HTTP client. We'll have our client here. And then we can set our base address, which we know if we just go back to our theme park wiki right here, if we just actually scroll back here, it actually gives us very, very handy, gives us the base URL right here. So let's just go ahead and copy this guy. Let's go back to Visual Studio Code. We'll set the base address to a new URI, set it equal to that. And let's remember to have the leading slash. That way there's no issue with if you just have destinations on the other side, somehow it just becomes part of the path and it sort of gets rid of the V1. I've seen that before and it's happened in the past. I believe just with this, well, I can't remove the singleton yet because I still have that second tool relying on that. And something I also want to do, let me see if I can remember how to do this. Builder services, JSON, configure JSON options. I think here, this might give us options perhaps. And maybe options, let's see, serializer options, case insensitive property case. Okay, this makes it so, okay, because I believe because this is required and it has this exact casing, property names in the model would need to have the same casing, but we don't really want that. I don't want to have to call this lowercase id because I just don't like that. So what we'd have to do is, you know, actually have it. Oh, I think I lost the response here, but I don't want to have it lowercase here, right? I want to be able to call it with the uppercase, the proper casing. So if I set the case insensitivity to true, then we can just pass it as long as the name matches, right? Slug, name, ID, parks. It should correctly deserialize it into the model. Okay, so wow, we are going through so much here. We have the JSON options configured, property name case insensitive true. We added the HTTP client, and now the sort of final thing to do is go to our tool set here. And now instead of doing get destinations HTTP client, what we can do is finally use our theme park client. And this is really where the fun becomes, or really where the fun, I guess, where it just gets a lot better. So in a similar vein, I'm still gonna do my try catch. So let's do try. Whoops, try here. We'll have catch exception X. And here we can say, so we can just leave it at the same thing. So just return this right here. All right, we'll just have this as X message. Now what we can do is we can just say var destinations equals client.getDestinations. And look how much nicer this is. I mean, we can literally just put all this back, the same thing we did earlier, because we still want this. If not destinations any, let's see what happened here. Because any should be working. So it cannot be inferred from the usage, destinations. This is an I only list. Get destinations, any. Okay, I'll get back to this soon. That should have worked, not entirely sure why. But we can even now just go down here. We can copy this return. And now what we can do is destination select. Instead of having this whole get property name thing, now we can just specify the name directly, right? This property that we're just getting. Now let's go back and see why we're getting some issues here. Okay, I'll just close this out and see what's happening. So client.destinations, oh, here we go. We need to use await. Okay, so await client destinations. If not destinations any, don't destinations found. We have the same sort of join. And now look how nice this is. Destination select, destination, destination name. I mean, this is just really, really clean. It makes everything that we had before about having to manually sort of plumb through all those specific properties. We just get it for free here. This is one of the nice things about creating these typed HTTP clients, okay? When you create the HTTP clients and you make them type like this, it makes it very easy for consumers to understand what they're using, and the values they get back are just a lot easier to use. You can see very clearly how we made a lot of improvements just by doing that. So what I want to do now is let's go back. Oh, wrong thing. Let me save this. Let's go back. Let me do a .NET build just to build everything, make sure that all looks good. Theme park server, everything built. Now ideally, right, let me make sure we do a debug build to refresh that. Let's now, in another terminal, is this one still running? This is still running. Let's close this one out. That's fine. This one's fine. Okay, what I want to do I still have access? Okay, model context protocol inspector. Because now I actually want to run this and see if it still works. Okay, it should work with the new code we just added. So, excuse me. Again, STDIO transport type, .NET command. We have our arguments right here, theme park MCP server.dll. And we're going to go ahead and connect to it. Good that it connected. We can list our tools. This is awesome. Let's do get destinations and let's go ahead and run the tool and see what happens. Now we have an error occurred invoking get destinations. What's the problem? I'm not entirely sure. Is there anything else that we get from here? We have arguments, clients, progress token, tools call. Name arguments is client progress token. Let's see if there's anything that maybe we didn't wire up correctly. So going back to our code here, let us see received post. Oh wait, looks like there is a lot of information here. Maybe we couldn't see before. Okay, command, received post message, created client transport. I think this is just the connection. STDIO, post message. All right. Let's see. So get destinations. It might be an issue actually with the, let's see. So destinations is the root one. We have items. Although, hey, check this out. It's not actually called items, right? Like I just said, we can't actually use a completely different name. I think this should probably be the same name as the other one. So maybe this should be destinations. This, instead of destinations, maybe this should be items. I think this is what needs to happen. So let me cancel this out. Make sure I'm still in code. I have to now go back to, let's see, not theme park tools, theme park. Let's see if we have the server here, client get destinations. We have to go back to the client itself right here. So this maybe should be items, okay? And response dot destinations. So what could have been happening here is that the name was literally different from what came in the model. All right, so let's go ahead and run this theme park MCP. Well, not run it, but let me go ahead and debug it. Not debug it, build a debug version. So we have the latest there. Let's go back over here. Let's go ahead and, oh, I have to reconnect to the model context protocol inspector. Let me just run this from here. Okay, are we gonna get a new window? We are. Let's go back over here. Okay, so connect, we can list tools. Let's go and see if we can get the destinations, run tool. Still an issue, an error occurred invoking get destinations. And I've seen this before, okay? It's like you fix one thing, something else happens. I feel like that was definitely a reason to be concerned though. It should definitely not be called like items. The property should be called destinations because that's what it shows in the property. Let me come right back just so I can take care of my dog. I think he's hungry, so just give me one moment. All right, the dog is back. He's happy. He's right here next to me. You can't really see him. He's off camera. If you've seen previous videos, you know normally he's sitting on the sofa right next to me. But anyway, check this out, all right? I just debugged this by asking ChatGPT, of course. I copied some of the output I got from the MCP model inspector, MCP context. I'm losing my mind here. MCP inspector debug tool. And the issue was that inside of the tool call, I was using the direct implementation of theme park client. So it's expecting for this to be an argument. And actually, if we go back, one of the cool things is now I know for next time, if we go back to the MCP inspector and we look at the tool calls that we had before, let me see if we can find one of the failed ones. Man, I wish we could, there you go. So tool list, oh, I think it's actually going to be maybe on this one. Look at this, arguments client. Okay, so you can see here, it was almost trying to use that client as an argument when that shouldn't be the case. Now in the right version, you can see that the arguments now line up with, oh, here we go. The arguments, right? Well, there actually is no arguments. It can figure out the rest on its own. So going back to our code here, oh, there you go. He's doing his thing. Let's actually use theme park client here. Let's save this. Let's build it. Hopefully you all can see that. All right. Let's go back to the MCP inspector. Actually, of course, let me go ahead and build it. Not build it, but start the MCP inspector here. So we can all see that together. Let me go ahead and connect. List tools, get destinations, run tool. And there you go. Now we're back in the same place that we were earlier. So we have all the different destinations here, right? Because now we're using that implementation or the interface instead of the direct implementation of theme park client. Okay, so we just did that with destination. Now let's wrap this video up since this is the longest I've recorded anything on my phone before. So I'm glad the AC is on in case that phone is heating up, so it's a little bit cooler in here and hopefully it can help. But now let's finally go back to our code. Let's close some of this stuff out to get some real estate. Close everything here. And now we're effectively going to do the same thing we did before. And I think I'm going to start with the models because I like that idea of doing that. So if we go back to our wiki here, we are going to need, I believe children is the right one. So let's open up a new tab. Let's go to something like Magic Kingdom. Let's copy this ID here because it's going to be what we need for this part. Let's just go here, copy the ID, and now we have all the different children, right? And this is exactly how before we're able to get a list of all the different shows and attractions and so on and so forth. This time again, I'm going to use null to see if there's anything that can be null, and it looks like the slug can be null at times. So let's make sure we account for that. And I'm going to do just like what I did before. I'm going to have the model on the right side of my screen and start creating some of them. So let's go back to models here. This time we're going to need, let's say we'll call this one, we're going to need, I think we could just have, yeah, an entity. So let's say here, let's say entity.cs, public sealed record entity. So here we'll have public required string ID, get init. We'll have public required string name, get init. Public required string entity type, get and init. We'll do public required string time zone, get init. Now entity type, I probably could make an enum where it's like park, show, attraction, right? I think maybe that would probably be a little better, but for the purposes of the video, I'll just stick to string for now. Okay, and then we're gonna have a child. So that's the last one of those. So let's create a new one here called child.cs, public sealed record child. This is going to have an ID. So public required string ID, get init, public required string name, get init, public required string entity type, get init. It's like I say that so often now, get init. Public required string slug, get init. Remember, just model creation, nothing too crazy. Public required string parent ID, get init. And I just remembered that I actually have, this is nullable. So, right, this can be nullable right here. So make sure to make that clear. Parent ID, we have public required string external ID, get init. And now we have location. So we'll have to create another one for location. Let's do location.cs, public sealed record. And why do I do sealed? I don't want anyone to be able to inherit from this or extend this object. This object should be on its own. It should live on its own. Location, we will do public required. This one I'm going to make a double, and we'll do this one a longitude, get init. We'll do public required double latitude, get init. And now it's complaining about the namespace. So let me go back and make sure all my namespaces are set. We'll do child. We just did that one. Destination has it. Entity needs it. We'll do this. And we'll also do park. Oh, I lost something here. We'll do park. Oh, wait, park already has it. Location is what needs it. Go over here, set the namespace, just remove some lines. Okay, so now we have all of our different models. And of course, now we have to go back. Let's say inside of my interface now, what I want to do is say task. Here I want to return an entity, and I can say get entity. Here, this will have to take a, let's say, string destination ID, and we can also give this a cancellation token. Okay. Default, so we have our task, everything's set up nicely. It's called get entity. So let's go over here and we'll keep this alphabetized. So public async task, we'll say entity. This is going to be get entity. In here, we can say we're passing in, was it the string destination ID cancellation token? Give it this. And now this one, we don't actually need to do anything specific like we did earlier. So here we can just say await client.gets from JSON async. This will return an entity. And then here we're going to actually set this to, this is going to be, let's do entity slash destination ID slash children. Okay. And I think that's it. Again, this is nullable. So can we just return? I think in this case, we should just throw an exception, because if we pass in a destination ID that doesn't exist, I don't want to do something like this where I could return an empty object, I suppose, but I'd rather just maybe throw, we'll say throw new invalid operation exception. So we'll say invalid, or we'll say no entity returned or no entity found for the given destination ID. Okay. So we have client here. Let's see, this is, why is this complaining? Oh, we have to pass in the cancellation token here. So what have we done so far? We now have the get entity method. We have it in the interface. Okay, so I believe we have everything that we need now. So if we now go finally back, let me just close all the open editors here. Let's go now to theme park tools and let's start messing around with this one. So what's the first thing we need to do? We need to get a list of destinations. And we already know how to do this, right? We can literally just copy this piece right up here and make sure that this time we're passing in the interface of iThemePark client. And we'll just go ahead and paste this right over here. So now we have our destinations. You see now we don't even have to like really do any of this. All right, so we have all the different parks, destinations. Let's see, all destinations. I think last times let's see, parks. So let's say destinations. And let me just make sure, going back to what we had before. Okay, destinations, parks. So let's say var parks equals destinations, select many, and we'll do destination parks, destination.parks. You see how nice everything just is sort of filled up? Now we have all destinations. We're sort of at this point here. And now we want to filter based on the destination same. So we'll say var, let's say filtered parks. We can say parks dot first or default. And we'll say park, where park dot name dot contains. Here we'll say our destination, string comparison, ordinal ignore case. So that's it, looking a lot better. We can literally just delete all this code here. I mean, this is really where things start to get nice. I mean, we're just cleaning up so much here, right? And now if no destination with name destination was found, here what we can say if filtered parks, and maybe here we can say filtered parks first or default. So why don't we say if filtered parks is equal to null, we can say no destination with name destination was found. And now we need to grab the ID of the destination name. So here, or let's say filtered park, because it's not parks, we're looking for the first one. So now here we can say var filtered park ID is equal to filtered park dot ID. Now we're going to use this new endpoint, right? That already handles this for us. Let's say var park, or let's say filtered park entity is equal to await client.get entity. This time we're going to pass the filtered park ID that we just got, right? So that sort of gets us to here, like this part right here. Now we need the children. So var filtered park entity children equals filtered park entity dot, let's see. Oh, there's an issue here. Name, time zone, entity. Oh, I think I know what happened. I never included it in the model. If we go back to entity, right, we have a child. We need public. Let's do public required I read-only list of child. We'll set this equal to children, get init. Okay, so making sure we fill everything up there. And now from here, we should be able to get children. So that sort of gets us down to this piece right here. We can pretty much just change all this. And now let's say, do I have a variable called attractions? I don't think so. We can say var attractions is equal to filtered park entity children. And we can say where, let's say child dot entity type equals attraction, and string comparison, ordinal ignore case. Let me just go here and put this on a new line. Just makes it a little bit easier to read. We can now delete all this piece right here. And finally, at the end, now we have attractions.select. We can have attraction. We can just remove all this and say attraction.name. And again, look how clean, or how much cleaner this code is, because now we have this typed HTTP client, right? We have a way, easy way to get destinations, an easy way for us to get an entity, give it an ID, right? These are all things that we can just do, and they just sort of work. That's one of the nicest things about this. And trust me, I've learned so much going through all this. So I'm hoping that you are all soaking all this in. And ideally, it's very much the same in all the different languages that we choose. Now let's get to the fun part. Okay, so let's close this out. Let's go ahead and do .NET build, and we'll do a debug build. And before, the first thing I want to try and do is let's debug the server. Okay, so we're going to go, open up the Model Context Protocol Inspector again. Wait for that tab to open up. Now we're here. Let's go back here. Let's connect to this guy. Let's make sure we can still get our destinations. That should still work exactly as it did before. Now let's go to attractions, and the name of the destination to fetch attractions for, let's try Magic Kingdom and see what happens. Run tool. Okay, so we are getting results here. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, the Barnstormer. That all makes sense. Let's keep going here and see what we get. Run tool. Okay, even with Epcot it worked. Let's do Islands of Adventure. Let's run the tool here. No destination with the name Islands of Adventure was found. That's very interesting. Is it spelled like this? Islands of Adventure? Okay, so it's without the apostrophe. Let's do Animal Kingdom. So it looks like all this so far is working, right? Wilderness Explorers, all that stuff looks great. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code, now let's finally run this the way that it was intended to be ran. We're going to navigate to, let me close this out here. We're going to navigate to the theme park MCP client. Inside of here, we're going to do .NET run. We're now going to pass theme park MCP server, theme park MCP MCP server.cs proj. Okay, let's see what happens. Connected to server with tools, get attractions. So how about let's just start with get destination. So how about list, or give me a list of all destinations. First, because I don't think we ever tried that tool. I always go directly to the attractions one, but we've never actually tried the other one. So let's see if this is working as it should. Again, we debugged it directly from the inspector, so we should be getting something here. Oh, nope, doesn't look like we got anything. So there is definitely an issue with the way that the content is being streamed back to our client. So, and that's what we saw before, right? The reason I wanted to get the HTTP client stuff out of the way is so that we don't have to, like, let's proceed with the rest of it. Let's get that piece working, because we can see that invoking the server directly does work, but maybe we're just getting some issues here. And I have a feeling I think I know what it is, but we're going to try some things out. And I just remember, before we even get there, one of the cool things is we can actually just delete all this code now. This whole like add singleton thing here. We can delete the HTTP client extensions. We don't need this anymore. Okay, so we have all that. Let's see if we can now just run everything again. Or not run, but do the same build as before. Make sure everything works as it should. One thing I do want to try is going back to theme park tools, or not theme park tools. Let me close all the editors, go back to the client, go back to program CS. For right here, this whole no build thing, I actually want it to do a build. Because I've seen sometimes where, it's like we want to do a build, or there's no build and I still do the build and somehow there's issues. So let's just see what this gives us. I'm going to once again do another build just for a quick sanity check. Theme park MCP client .NET run theme park MCP server. I'm probably just wasting so many keystrokes doing this over and over again. I should at least be copying this command to the clipboard at the very least, which let me see if I can do that. because I don't want to be writing this anymore. I know there's probably a better way of doing this, but we'll save that for a separate video. Okay, enter a command. So get or give me a list of all attractions. Let's see what happens here. It's weird because, you know, when it's like debugging, if I debug it, it works. And if I don't debug it, it doesn't work. So, okay, so do you want attractions for all destinations or for a specific destination? Okay, so I remember seeing this before where earlier, like yesterday when I was messing around with this, I was like, why is it giving me this like weird output? It's like sort of doing its own thing apart from what I'm asking it, or how to explain it. Like it's not giving me the output that I would expect. Okay. So do you want attractions for all destinations or for a specific destination? Let's say, no, I just want all destinations. But before we get there, let me see something right here. I am including the options. I know I wasn't doing that yesterday when I was trying all this out. I was accidentally not including the options. That was one thing. And then the other piece was that the arguments that I was passing, these arguments, get command and arguments from args. So we are passing in the right arguments here. I think yesterday I was doing args here by accident, not actually arguments. So let's see, arguments come from there. We do get command and args, csproj.net run project script. So we are giving it the right project. It's going, well, let's see. Let's see if it just does what we asked for. Let me go back to the server just to make sure things don't look so crazy here. Attraction select, attraction name. Here we're doing return string.join, destination select, destination.name. So everything from this point of view looks good. Get a list of theme park destinations. I want a list of theme park destinations. This time I'm being a little bit more explicit. Maybe I'm not describing what I want to do in the best way. This could also be the fault of the model. I'm not going to just blame it on the model, but at least at work, sometimes I see if I'll use a cheap model, it'll literally just not do the right thing. And you have to be very, very explicit. Let's now try to get for a specific park. So give me a list of attractions in the Epcot Park. Okay, let's see what this does now. If not, what we're going to do is we're going to open up Codex and we're going to ask it some questions. And that's how we're going to debug this together. Because it must be something I'm not doing that is probably very easy. See, this time it worked. Okay. House of the. Okay, it kind of like stopped here. Oh, that's probably because of the tokens, I imagine. Right? Because we're limiting the amount of tokens we get here. If we go back to the client, go to program here, the max output tokens is 1,000. So I'm going to assume that's why I just cut off down there. So we did, here are the attractions listed for Epcot. Let me do the same thing again. Last time we tried Islands of Adventure. So give me a list of attractions in Islands of Adventure. Let's see what this happens. Or let's see what happens with that new output there. So yeah, it seems like it just works for some. Let's try again for Epcot Park. Okay, we're going to issue it again for Epcot Park. See if anything happens here. If not, we'll wrap up and we'll ask some questions to Codex to see what more we can learn. This is going to be a long video. It's going to be a very long video. But that's really how we learn. And I know I keep saying that, but that's really the point of all this. Because it's one thing for me to just, like, I can make a very contrived video about all this, but I think by me making these super long videos, it's just more fun. And I've seen videos out there in the wild of people really, like, I've seen hour-long videos, and I myself have even watched hour-long videos of other developers doing something similar. So let's go ahead and exit here. Let's open up Codex. And let me just do this. Okay, so for some commands, let's do, when I run, let me just get all the context here. So enter a command. Okay, when I run the following command, connected to server to tools. Oh, give me a list of all attractions. Let's do right here. I would expect for the tool, let's go to theme park tools, the tool inside of, is there a way inside of theme park tools.cs named Let's go over here, get attractions to be invoked. However, it seems like the output is empty. What I'm also going to do is give it some more context. So I am following, for reference, let's do for reference, I am following this example on building an MCP client. And also, let's copy the documentation from Microsoft. I am also referencing the Microsoft documentation for streaming a chat response. Okay, a lot of context there. Good prompt. Let's see what it does for us. Hopefully it doesn't just change everything. You want the client prompt to trigger get attractions, but right now it returns nothing. I'm going to inspect the client server tool wiring. I found a likely mismatch. Get attractions requires a destination argument, but your prompt asks for all attractions without one. I meant the wrong one. I meant get destinations. Nope, okay, I'm gonna stop it there. I meant the get destinations tool. Okay, let's see what this does. Hopefully it just keeps whatever it was trying to do before. Thinking. Oh, maybe I messed it up here and I got it upset. Anyways, this is typical, right? Now, especially with all this AI tooling, it makes sense for you to be able to have this. I know a lot of people have been using Claude, just being on Twitter Spaces. A lot of people use Claude, and I did use Claude before, but I figured, I was paying for 2 subscriptions and I use ChatGPT all the time. Let me just use Codex. Okay, you clarified you expect. I'm editing both update text and stream text contents and to send full chat history each turn. So tool calling middleware has proper context. You see, this is so much. I feel like this is so much for something that is probably a very simple issue. Use available tools to answer questions about theme park destinations. Await for each. This is like way too much, right? This is like way too much going. I'm gonna undo this. Changes reverted. Can you offer a more simple solution? Is there an issue with how the wiring is set up from the theme park MCP client and the theme park MCP server? Okay, let's see. Yeah, because when it starts changing all these different files, or not even files, there's way too much context. I know it's because I've done this before with much less code. So when I see that it's modifying so much, I'm like, this is not right. I don't love this. Okay, so the bigger issues are, yes, the wiring between looks basically correct. Server registration is fine. Client discovery is fine. The bigger issues, prompt tool mismatch. Give me a list of attractions does not target get destinations. Get a list of theme park destinations. Streaming rendering complexity. Your original loop only wrote update text, but tool-enabled streaming can emit text via other content parts. If you want the simplest reliable path, skip streaming for now. That's not really great. I mean, that doesn't really answer anything. Let's see. Get a list of attractions in theme park. Get a list of theme park destinations. Okay, let's do this. Instead of changing anything, let me remove this. Let's go ahead and build it again. .NET build, even though the command should build it itself. Theme park MCP client. Let's do .NET run. Theme park MCP server. Theme park MCP server CS proj. So maybe this time let's be very specific. Give me a list of theme park destinations. So I think I kept using the word attractions, and maybe that's why I wasn't able to find it. Because everything looks right to me, but I'm sure something very simple. Excuse me. See what happens this time. If not, we're gonna have to do another cut. Yeah, give me a list of theme park destinations. And even now, it's like enter a command or exit to quit. I feel like there's something else wrong here, because also I shouldn't be seeing enter a command or exit to quit twice. That's something that's a little bit telling. So let me go, give me a second, I'll be right back and we'll figure out what the issue is. All right, so I figured out the issue. I was talking to Codex a little bit, And I saw this one paragraph here that was very interesting. If you still see intermittent misses after this, the next lever is model tool policy. For example, stronger system instruction or a larger model. One of the things that I actually did was I asked Codex to help me enhance some of these descriptions. So a better description here and also here. So list attractions for one specific destinations, a description for the argument, so destination name to filter attractions by. And it turns out, well, as far as I can tell, that was the issue. Remember, I was using the cheapest model, but I was out of credits. When I tried to actually improve to the next model, which is GPT Mini, go back to Program CS, you can see now I'm using GPT-5 Mini. You can already see now a couple of examples from down here. So let's start again and expand this so we can finally see the fruits of our labor. So .NET Run, this is using the better model. So let's say list all destinations. Let's see what happens this time. It should work because I literally just ran it. If you were a keen viewer, you would have seen the output down there. Let's see what this does this time. Now this is working as expected using a better model. Remember, the MCP inspector is very deterministic. You can give it a very specific input. You're telling it exactly what tool to call with the exact inputs. But when you're letting the client and the model decide for you, it can be a little bit less so, right? So the model that you're using really sort of comes into play. And I also do believe that the description of the tooling and the arguments probably help a lot to guide it in the right direction. So now we have a list of attractions that we have here, a list of parks. Let's say, give me a list of attractions inside of Epcot. Let's see what it gives us this time. Again, it should work, literally just did it, but you know how the video goes. Now we're getting nice responses, complete responses, nothing like we were seeing before that it was cut off, mission space, thrown around the world, gallery of arts and history. Let's try one more. Give me a list of attractions inside of Animal Kingdom. Okay, let's see what this does. It's gonna be a long video, but I'm really glad that a lot of this happened because we got a lot to, we got a chance to see a lot of things. Now we have all the different ones. This is sad because Dinosaur literally just closed. But anyway, fellas, anyone that's watching, this is a long video, even longer than the MCP server one. I thought this video was going to be shorter because I actually did a little bit of prep beforehand. But as it turns out, a lot of times when you're talking about these things, it's a lot harder to do while you're being recorded. So what do? We created the MCP client using OpenAI instead of Anthropic, just like the documentation showed. We ran into some issues initially, which helped us go through a full workflow where we can actually start the MCP client and debug the MCP server by having two separate windows open. I thought that part was really cool. We saw a little bit how we can debug using the core CLR type in the launch profile to see how that can help us sort of step through the client. Remember, we're able to do that because we own the client. If we start the server on its own, there's no owner, there's no port or socket that we can connect to, but if we start the client, we can actually debug it. And finally, we created a typed HTTP client, and we missed out, or not missed out, we decided not to use case insensitivity so we can do the deserialization correct. And we saw how using a typed client makes it a lot easier to read the code. It removes a lot of the code and sort of plumbing we had to do with the JSON documents and the get property and all that weird stuff, and just allows for it to be a lot easier to read. And finally, by upgrading to a better model and actually getting some more credits inside of the API dashboard, the AI dashboard, we were actually able to get some nice responses. So we learned a ton in this video, and I hope that you did as well. So pick any of your favorite languages, go through the whole process yourself, and get to the point that I am in now. I'm going to push all this stuff up to GitHub, and I'll add the link in the description below if you want to see the final code and see how you can sort of map it to whatever language you're using, or maybe even C# if you're doing the same thing. And I'll try to remember to have all the other links to all the other documents, like the MCP, the Microsoft document, the OpenAI docs, and a ton of other stuff that hopefully I'll remember. Now I have to go back and make sure I take all those cuts out. I think I did 3, so let's hope I did. Else I'm gonna have to sit and watch an 1.5 hour long video to make sure there's not too much dead air. But as always, thank you all so much for watching. The next thing that we'll cover is, well, honestly, I'm not really sure yet. It might be authentication and security related concepts that are right there in the documentation. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun exploring that. Else, maybe we'll start looking into creating some memory for this application or this agent. Maybe look into implementing modes, or even to see how we could create our own agents with / commands to invoke some of these tool selections for us. Either way, I'm having a lot of fun doing all this, and I hope you are as well. So if you liked the video, remember to like the video, subscribe, comment, do all that fun stuff, and I will see you next time. Take it easy, everyone. A very long video, but I hope I'm learning a lot, and that's really what matters. See you all next time.